Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right, we're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
Off we go! I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
Rushing to fill their suitcases with last-minute travel must-haves like stuffed animals, candy, and their favorite fidgets, Levi and Ivy ran around the house full of excitement. They were on their way to see their cousins who lived a few states away, and they only had a few minutes before they had to leave. And it's important to know, this wasn't going to be a road trip in their family car. Nope. That day, they would be taking a trip on an airplane. Levi and Ivy love to fly and could have not been more excited. You don't want the plane to leave without you, do you? Called Levi and Ivy's dad as his kids ran in and out of their rooms. Just one more minute, shouted Ivy. I need to find my favorite bathing suit. It's already in your suitcase, honey, replied her mom from the living room. I need to find my baseball hat and sunglasses, said Levi as he ran to the top of the stairs. Has anyone seen them? His dad walked over to him and started to laugh as he pointed to his son's head. You're wearing your hat and your sunglasses are around your neck, he said. Levi raised his eyes up and saw the brim of his hat. Oh, thanks, Dad, he said as he turned and ran back toward his room. I'm going to start loading up all of our bags into the car. Please be outside in 5 minutes, said Levi and Ivy's dad as he grabbed a suitcase and walked downstairs. I can't wait until we're on the plane, said Ivy with a huge smile. Takeoff is my favorite part of the whole trip. Racing down the runway faster and faster, then all of a sudden you feel the wheels leave the ground and then zoom, you're off. I love soaring through the clouds, added Levi. And landing is so much fun too, because that means we'll be so much closer to seeing our cousins Stella and Jameson. Great point, said Ivy as she grabbed her backpack from her bed. I think I have everything I'll need. And if I missed anything, I can borrow something from Stella. The two very excited kids switched off the lights in their room, took one last look around to make sure they weren't forgetting anything important, and they ran off to the car to head to the airport. Once they arrived at the airport, it seemed like days before Levi and Ivy boarded the plane. But in reality, it was only a couple of hours. Once on the plane, they ran down the aisle, found their seats, and sat down right away. Their parents, on the other hand, were slowly making their way to their kids as they juggled everyone's carry-on bags. Excuse me, sorry, right behind you, said Levi and Ivy's parents as they bumped into other passengers while trying their best to manage all the bags they were holding. Levi, Ivy, can you please grab your bags? Asked their mom as she got a bit closer to their seats. Levi and Ivy didn't respond at first, as they were staring out the window watching other planes land and take off on the runway. Finally, they heard their mom calling their names, and they helped her with their bags. Hey, Mom, you should have asked for help earlier, said Levi calmly, taking his bag from his mom. Levi's mom just laughed as she handed over the bag. She put her carry-on in the overhead compartment above her seat and finally had a chance to sit down. Levi and Ivy did the same, and so did their dad, just as the plane was getting ready to pull away from the gate. This is going to be so exciting, Levi said with a huge smile. We'll be soaring through the clouds in no time. But first, we have to take off, said Ivy. We'll be racing down that runway in no time. Then, before we know it, we'll be playing with Stella and Jameson, added Levi as he stared out the window over Ivy's shoulder. Levi had agreed that Ivy could have the window seat for takeoff, and they would switch halfway through the flight so he could have the window seat for landing. As the plane pulled away from the boarding gate, they both sat back in their seats ready for an amazing adventure. However, they could have never imagined what exactly was waiting for them. The flight attendants began to get everyone ready for the flight by going over all the safety instructions. In case of an emergency landing, we'll follow these procedures, one flight attendant said before they went on to list out all the things they would do to make sure everyone was safe in that situation. Can you imagine if our plane had to make an emergency landing? Asked Levi to Ivy. I bet it would be pretty scary, but I'm sure it's nothing we have to worry about, replied Ivy as she continued to look out the window. Yeah, I'm sure you're right, added Levi. It's a beautiful day, perfect weather, and I'm sure nothing could go wrong on this flight. But as he said that, Levi had a feeling that he had never had while flying before. It was a little wave of nervousness that ran through his little body. He didn't think much of it, but he definitely noticed it. There's nothing to be nervous about, Levi told himself as the plane readied itself on the runway. Here we go, exclaimed Ivy in a whisper as the captain announced they were ready for takeoff. The engines revved, and as they got louder and louder, the plane started to go faster and faster. And before Levi and Ivy knew it, they felt like they were in a rocket blasting off to space. The wheels rumbled along the ground as the plane raced down the runway. Then all of a sudden, you couldn't hear or feel them anymore. "We're off the ground!" shouted Ivy to Levi over the roar of the plane engines as they started to climb into their cruising altitude. "I feel like a bird!" Levi's nervous feeling had gone away, and the feeling of pure joy and freedom took over. He felt like an eagle flying toward the clouds above. He watched the buildings and cars below on the ground get smaller and smaller as the plane continued to fly higher and higher into the sky. Then, after a few minutes, the plane leveled off, and the captain let all passengers know that they had reached 35,000 feet and that the rest of the flight should be smooth sailing. Shouldn't the captain say smooth flying? I mean, this isn't a boat, giggled Ivy. But that would be pretty cool if we were flying in a boat right now, laughed Levi as he took out a book to read. Ivy settled in too and took out a drawing pad to sketch for a while. The sun streaming through the plane window made a nice light for her to draw by. Levi read his book and everything was fine. Until all of a sudden, the light through the window got dim, and finally there was no light streaming in at all. "What's going on?" asked Levi as he turned to look out the window. "It shouldn't be getting dark out now. It's morning time." Ivy looked surprised as well and stared out the window at some very dark clouds. "Are we okay up here?" asked Ivy, looking around to see if anyone else was seeing what she and Levi were seeing. Levi and Ivy's parents could tell their kids were getting a little nervous, so they quickly let them know that planes fly through storms all the time and everything would be okay. Just then, the captain hopped on the loudspeaker to talk to all the passengers. "Hello, folks. This is your captain speaking. It looks like we're running into a little rough weather that just popped up out of nowhere. We should be flying out of it shortly, but until then, please stay seated with your seatbelts on. We may hit some turbulence, but it's nothing to worry about." What? asked Levi as he looked at his parents. "Turbulence. It's unstable air moving around the plane. It can make the plane ride feel bumpy, like driving over a rocky road," explained Levi's dad. "We'll be fine." "A bumpy road? In the sky?" asked Ivy to Levi. "We've never had any turbulence on any of our other flights. Why do we have it now?" "Well, we have only flown twice before, and Dad said it's pretty common, so we should be fine," answered Levi. "And who knows, maybe it'll be fun." "I guess you're right," said Ivy. "It's always fun when Mom and Dad drive down that bumpy back road when we go to Grandma Sherry's house. It feels like a roller coaster." "And I love roller coasters," said Levi. "So let's sit back and wait for the sky roller coaster to begin." Both Levi and Ivy were now a little excited about the possibility of turbulence, especially since their dad and the captain told them it was nothing to worry about. And they didn't have to wait very long to experience for themselves. However, when they did, it was definitely not what they expected. "Hello, everyone. This is your captain again. We are headed for some bumpy airspace, so hold on and sit tight," he said as Levi and Ivy felt their first little bit of turbulence, which didn't seem like very much at first. "That's nothing," joked Levi. "This is like a kiddie roller coaster." Then the turbulence got a little stronger. Now it's kind of like a big kid roller coaster," said Ivy as she grabbed her brother's hand. "I'm not scared or anything, just thought maybe you were and needed me to hold your hand." Levi's voice sounded shaky, and Ivy could tell he was nervous too. Yeah, that would be fine. You can hold my hand, Ivy." "Are you two okay?" asked Levi and Ivy's mom from across the aisle. "It's gonna be okay. Mommy and Dad are right here." They could tell Levi and Ivy were getting more and more worried as the turbulence got stronger. They were also getting a little worried as the plane shook and dipped in the sky. The turbulence wasn't stopping, and Levi and Ivy squeezed each other's hands as they looked over at their parents, who were trying to stay as calm as possible for their kids, not wanting them to see that they were getting a bit nervous too. Don't worry, kiddos, said Levi and Ivy's dad as he rumbled around in his seat. Just think of it like a big amusement park ride. Or think of that bumpy back road we drive down on our way to Grandma Sherry's house, added Levi and Ivy's mom. It'll stop in no time, I am sure of it. But the turbulence didn't stop. In fact, it got a bit worse. That's when the captain got back on the loudspeaker and told all passengers that he was going to have to make an emergency landing. Emergency landing? Shouted Levi to Ivy. Just like we were talking about before the plane took off. You said we had nothing to worry about. And you said the weather was perfect and nothing could go wrong on this flight, replied Ivy. I guess we're both wrong, said Levi. But I don't care about being right or wrong now. I just care about getting back on the ground safely. Me too, said Ivy as she gave her brother a hug. The flight crew went over the safety procedures again. However, this time, they weren't just talking about them. They were making sure that every passenger was doing exactly what they said. The captain told all passengers to stay calm and that they would be on the ground shortly. Levi and Ivy closed their eyes at first until curiosity took over and they both leaned over to look out the window. As they approached the ground, the plane broke through a layer of thick gray clouds. After breaking through the clouds, the turbulence thankfully stopped. But the emergency landing was still necessary because they could not continue to fly at their cruising altitude at such bad weather. Levi and Ivy stared wide-eyed out the window and could finally see the ground coming into view. But it wasn't what they thought they were going to see. Ivy, are you seeing this? Asked Levi. I don't think we're landing at an airport. At least not any airport that I've ever seen. As Ivy and Levi took a closer look, they couldn't believe what they saw. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a magical forest where the trees shimmered with color-changing leaves. Glowing crystal blue rivers painted watery lines across the land. Why do you think the captain is landing the plane here? Asked Levi. And before Ivy could think of an answer, the captain was back on the loudspeaker. Everyone, I don't know how to explain this, but it looks like we'll be landing in began the captain, trying to find the words to explain what he was seeing. A magical forest! Blurted out Levi and Ivy. But by the time they had let everyone know where they would be landing, they felt the wheels of the plane bounce off the ground and begin to roll. The plane was tearing through the forest, but unbelievably seemed to be avoiding every tree, river, and mountain in its path. This place is really magic, whispered Levi to Ivy as they watched the beginning of a magical adventure unfold outside their window. But if they thought that was amazing, they had no idea what was waiting for them outside the plane. However, they would soon find out. The plane zoomed along with the captain in complete control the whole time. The landing was surprisingly calm for touching down in a magical-looking forest with no runway, and Levi and Ivy were mesmerized by what they saw outside their window. So mesmerized, in fact, that they didn't notice what happened in the plane. This is amazing! Take a look, Mom and Dad! We're in a magical forest! Exclaimed Ivy. Have you ever seen so many flowers or so many beautiful colors? Asked Levi with a huge smile on his face. Happy to be on the ground, Levi and Ivy turned all their attention to the world outside the plane. They were both so excited to get out and explore if they could. However, as they continued to tell their parents what they were seeing, they noticed, after a little while, that their parents weren't answering them back. Mom, did you hear me? Called out Ivy. Look at that river, it's glowing. But no response. Dad, are you two listening to us? This place is amazing, asked Levi as he finally turned to look at his parents. That's when Levi and Ivy both noticed that something strange was going on. Yes, something even stranger than their plane making an emergency landing in a magical forest. Everyone else on board, every other passenger seemed to be frozen. No one was moving or saying a word. They were all just sitting in the plane motionless, including Levi and Ivy's parents. Mom, Dad, can you hear us? Called out Levi and Ivy as they stood in the aisle of the plane in front of their parents' seats, but they still didn't answer. Oh no, said Levi. Something is really wrong here. And before Ivy could react to what was going on, a shimmering light filled the inside of the plane cabin. It was blue and purple and green and streamed in through the windows, flooding the plane with bright lights and colors. And that's when Levi and Ivy met her. "Please don't be scared," said a quiet voice that seemed to sail out of the light. "My name is Luma, and we need your help." Levi and Ivy took a step toward where they heard the sound of the voice, and there she was, a tiny fairy with silver hair and the most piercing blue eyes. Her skin glowed like the forest around them, and Levi and Ivy instantly knew they were in for an adventure. "Hi, Luma. I'm Levi, and this is my sister Ivy," said Levi. "Where are we, and who needs our help?" Hey, friends, that is the end of part 1. Come back soon for part 2. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.